Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this webinar on scheduling FTP file transfers. The presentation itself is roughly about 20 minutes, and we'll get into any questions you have at the end. Feel free to put them in at any point throughout.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Let's get started. Today we're looking at scheduling FTP file transfers to and from a Horner OCS. Let's break down our topic for today. We'll start with what an FTP is and when you would use it. We'll look at setting up FTP on the OCS, and we'll introduce Envision Effects software, which is a software utility from Horner that can be really useful for automating and scheduling file transfers from your machinery based on OCS to a computer. There will be demonstrations throughout, and we'll finish with a Q&A session. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. It's an Ethernet-based protocol used for transferring files between computers, from computer to machine and vice versa. From an Ethernet port standpoint, it uses ports 20 and 21, and it's supported by all Horner OCS All-in-one Controllers with a built-in Ethernet port, which is all of them except the X2 entry-level micro OCS. You would use FTP anytime your machine controlled by an OCS is connected to a local Ethernet network and there's a computer somewhere on that network which wants to read or write files from the OCS itself to that computer. Some of the files we might want to transfer would be application files, data log files, report files, and screen captures. We're going to start with a review of a demo of the machine example that we've simulated that later we're going to use FTP to do some file transfers. So we've simulated a machine that effectively produces batches of material, and you have the ability to select the material and the quantity that you want, and to execute a batch from the front. After it finishes with manufacturing, this batch of material is going to use the Cscape report editor to automatically generate a production ticket that gets logged to the memory card. That is a record of what happened with this batch. And then that's the file that we're going to be handling from an FTP standpoint. Now we'll look at some of the file handling we've done on the OCS itself, which doesn't have anything to do with FTP, it just factors into the overall workflow. So we've had a production ticket based on the batch we just produced, which is ready here, and then that as well as a production report, those files are given generic type names, and they end up in this print folder on the memory card. And that's where the last production report and the last production ticket get printed. So that's how we've set up the application. Now, immediately after those are printed, in our application, we archive those files and we've set up a structure of folders here. And whether it's a report or a ticket, we give it a new name, which is based on the date and the time. And then if we scroll down to the bottom here, we'll see the report that we just printed at the bottom of the list, and that's located in the archive folder. The purpose of that is just to have a safe place for that file to stay, but we also make a copy of the file and renamed it, and then made another copy and put it in a send folder, which is where we've marked a location for the remote FTP client on the computer to come copy files, and when it's finished to delete them, because the original copy of the file has been archived elsewhere in the memory card. So that's the workflow here on this particular OCS, and we're going to use FTP to take files out of that send folder, and then we're going to delete them once we're finished uploading them. Now we'll look at some of the setup in Cscape. We use the report editor in this application and also use removable media function blocks. So we'll review what we did to generate these files, and then we'll move on to FTP. So in the program report editor section, this is where we created the production report and the ticket. And this is the ticket that is generated after every batch. So we go under File and Configure Printer, and we can see that there's a generic file name for that ticket, and it gets copied into that print folder. And then from there, we're going to use logic removable media function blocks to make copies of that file and archive them away. So here's the removable media function block, and that takes that generic ticket right after it's been printed, renames it, and archives it based on the day and the month and the hour and the minutes. And then we make another copy a little further down here, and that goes into the send folder. So that's how this application is set up. To set up FTP on the OCS, we firstly have to make sure our Ethernet port is fully configured. For most applications, that means at least the IP address and the net mask, but if you're going to be doing FTP remotely, then you'll need a gateway as well. Once you set up Ethernet the way you normally would, the next step is to go to the resident protocols there in the Ethernet configuration and make sure that FTP is selected. And then, once you've highlighted that and press the Configure Selected Protocol button, then you can add up to 2 login credentials. If you add both a read-only and a read-write login credential, that gives the most flexibility. After you've set up the OCS to support FTP, you still need a piece of software on your computer to actually do the transfer, which is called an FTP client. A lot of these are open source and are free, including the one we use, which is called FileZilla. There's also a pro version of FileZilla that allows you to do some automation and some automatic background type file transfers. Another very popular one is called WinSCP. EnvisionFX is a Windows FTP client from Horner Automation. It was designed not as a general purpose FTP client, but as an FTP client specifically based around communicating within OCS. It supports scripting and scheduling, which for automated file transfers can be very useful, and we're going to look at how to do that later. Also, it comes with Horner support. And then finally, you don't have to have a Horner product with an Ethernet port to be able to exchange files with EnvisionFX. That's because as long as you can communicate with the Horner product, whether that's over USB or CAN or Ethernet, you can also exchange files. Now we'll look at a demonstration of setting up FTP on the OCS and using an FTP client. We'll start by going into Cscape and then into hardware configuration. So we're going to go to the configuration on LAN 1, we're using an XL4 and there's only one Ethernet port, and we'll make sure the Ethernet port is configured with at least an IP address and net mask. And then under resident protocols we make sure FTP is selected. And then we highlight it and press configure selected protocol. And there are the two user credentials. Now we're finished, except for the download portion, configuring FTP with the Horner OCS. Now we'll close Cscape and we'll open an FTP client, starting with FileZilla, which is a nice general FTP client utility that is open source and free. So we type in the connection details for our OCS here and our login credentials. And for read-write, we'll say admin and 1234, which is what we configured. And then we'll press quick connect. So on the left are the files on the computer and on the right are the files on the micro SD card on the XL4. So we can go to the print directory and see the last two tickets in the production reports that were filed, and then go to the send folder. And there we see all the files that are sitting there waiting to be uploaded. And we can do that manually if we want, so we'll do that. We highlight those files and drag them over into another directory, and it doesn't take long because they are small files. Now we'll go into EnvisionFX, and we can see that it is similar in a lot of ways to a generic FTP client. On the left are files on the local computer, so now we'll navigate to the C drive and go to the EnvisionFX folder. And then we've created a files folder beneath that where all the files that we just uploaded using FileZilla have been placed. And you can see that it's here on the left. Now we don't have the OCS connected yet, so we'll do that now. To do that, we go to the File menu, then Connect and Connection Wizard, and we can see that this connection wizard looks very similar to the one that we used in Cscape, and our connection method will be Ethernet. All the default information is fine, so we press OK here, and then within seconds we get the same view of the micro SD card that we had with FileZilla. So we can go into the send folder and see the files that we already uploaded. Now we said we wanted to upload the files and then delete them when I uploaded using FileZilla, but we didn't delete them. So we use EnvisionFX to delete them here. So that's what's involved when it comes to using both an FTP client as well as EnvisionFX manually when you're connecting to an OCS over FTP. Now we'll look at how we can automate these file transfers, because if you have files that are being generated often and you want to upload or retrieve them on a regular basis, it makes sense to automate the process. Many FTP clients have the ability to support scheduled file transfers, FileZilla Pro being one, but we won't go into detail on those today. Instead, we'll talk about using EnvisionFX to automate your file transfers. There are three key features in EnvisionFX that make it conducive to performing these automated transfers. The first one is scripting, and that's used so that you can tell EnvisionFX through the script you create what you want to have happen during the session in which EnvisionFX is connected to the OCS, e.g. what files you want to retrieve or delete, etc. Scheduling is a key feature which allows you to have a script that only executes certain days of the week and certain times of the day. And then you can also run things in silent mode, so that after you set it up, all the file transfers just happen in the background without any human intervention. The first step in creating an automated file transfer using EnvisionFX is to create the script, which is just a text file that contains the instructions that tell EnvisionFX what you want to have happen automatically. Once you've created your script, you're going to create a Windows shortcut, which will invoke Envision and specify your custom script that you've created that needs to be executed. And if everything needs to run in the background in silent mode, then you would specify that as well from the shortcut. Once the shortcut has been created and customized, you're going to run that to trigger the script. And you can copy that shortcut into your Windows startup folder so that every time that computer starts up, it runs the script and is ready to go. Now we look at some of the key script commands that we can use in our script. Starting with open command, which establishes the connection with the OCS and tells us the IP address if we're talking over Ethernet and the timeouts, etc. There's another command called local cd, which tells the PC what directory to change to, because we're going to want to switch to a particular directory where the files will be copied into, or maybe where you're going to retrieve the files that we're going to send to an OCS. There's a command called cd up, which is implemented on the OCS side, and it moves the current directory up one level to the parent directory on the OCS. So in this application, all the files that are going to be retrieved by the FTP client are going to be one directory down from the root directory. And then there's a cwd command, which changes the working directory on the OCS drive. So I'll use that to change to our send directory so that the EnvisionFX can find the files that it needs to upload. And then when we upload files, we can either use the retr command, which is retrieving a single file from the OCS, or a get command, which we can use to retrieve multiple files. If we retrieve multiple files, we need to get wildcards like star.star and question mark to specify the specific files that we want to get. If you want to copy a file automatically from the computer to the OCS, you use the restore command, store. The rnf4 command is used to rename a file on the OCS side of things. Now in this example, we're not using that as we did our renaming and everything through code on the OCS, but there are applications where the computer could decide to handle the renaming of a file. There's a delete command, which is used to delete the files after it's uploaded, and then there's a quit command that closes the connection at the end. There are others as well, but these are the most important script commands. Now we'll do a demonstration of building script for EnvisionFX. We'll start by opening up the file location that EnvisionFX is loaded in. An important note is that the default location for EnvisionFX, when you install it from the installer, is in the Program Files x86 location on your computer, which is set as a read-only type directory. And we'll want to edit script files and have some other log files and things that show up in that directory, so we installed the EnvisionFX folder directly off the root directory of the C drive. So that's just where we've put it here to keep everything read right. So we have a previously created script file, which we'll review now. We'll open it here, and we can see it's just a text file that opens in Notepad. The first thing we notice is the open command and how long the syntax is. EnvisionFX can generate that syntax for us, and we'll show you how. Firstly, we load EnvisionFX application, and from the help file, we select a special option called Generate Connection String, and it pulls up the connection details. Once everything is the way we want it, we press OK, and it copies the connection syntax in the correct format to the clipboard. So when we close EnvisionFX and go back to the script, and right-click and then click Paste, all the syntax is perfectly created for the file. So after the open command, the next thing we do in our script is change on our local directory to the C EnvisionFX files folder, where we'll copy our files when we copy them to the PC. Next, we're executing a cd up command, which, on the OCS drive, moves and makes sure the OCS is up at the top level of the file hierarchy. Next, on the OCS side of things, we're executing a cwd or change working directory to the send folder. That's the folder where we place our files to be uploaded by the FTP client. After switching to that directory, we'll do a get star.star, which uploads all those files that are in that folder. Then we'll do a delete star.star because once we've uploaded them, we want to keep that directory clean. And then we do the quit command. So that's the script that we've created for this particular application. Once we've created our script, the next step of the workflow is to create a shortcut for our EnvisionFX script. So we go to the folder that EnvisionFX is contained in, right-click on the executable file, and we're going to select the Create Shortcut button. Now, if we've installed EnvisionFX in the default directory with the Windows x86, that's going to be a read-only type directory, and we're going to have to copy that newly created shortcut somewhere else, like for instance the desktop. But if we've put it in a read-write location, like the one that we selected, we won't have that problem. Once we've created this new shortcut, now we need to customize it by right-clicking on it and pressing Properties. Once we go into Properties, the main focus is customizing the target line. So we're going to add the details of our script to the end of the target line. We'll add a space, and then we're going to add the full name of the script file, including .txt. And then, if we want to invoke silent mode as well, we would put an additional space and then -silent at the very end. Once we're done, we press OK, and we've created our EnvisionFX script shortcut. Now we'll look at a demo to create this shortcut. So in the folder containing EnvisionFX, we're going to right-click on the executable and hit Create Shortcut. That creates this file here called EnvisionFX Shortcut. Now we'll right-click on that and press Properties, and we'll customize the target line. Now we need to add the full name of the script file, and we have to remember to put the .txt at the end, and this is where we would also add space -silent if that's what we were doing. Ultimately, this will be a silent mode file, but for the sake of the demonstration, we're going to just include the script file. We press OK, and now there's a shortcut that's been created, that when we double click on it, it'll execute that script. Before we demonstrate that, we need to make sure we have a new file that we want to upload. So we'll print a new production report and then go to the send folder and make sure that that production report is there. And it is. And you can see that we renamed it to a name that's based on the time and date. Now we'll go back to the computer and we'll see what happens when we double click that shortcut. So a window pops up because we're not in silent mode, and then it's executing the script, and it is giving feedback in this console. And we can see that everything went well and that it retrieved the file with the name that we saw there in our send directory. It executes a delete and it said everything went well. Now we'll go to this files folder and we can see that it added this new file just now. And now we'll go back and verify that the file was deleted from the memory card. So we go into our send folder and there we can see that the directory is now fully empty. Now we'll look at the next part of our workflow. So we've created a custom shortcut that specifies Envision Effects and which script for it to run. Now we'll make this fully automated. What we've done so far would allow a human to double click on a custom developed shortcut and would allow them to trigger the automatic retrieval of a file without having to remember the connection details on the OCS, which file needs to be retrieved, where it's going on the computer, etc. They just need to double click on the shortcut and it handles it for them. So the next part of our workflow is to create a timed schedule for the script so that it executes at certain times and on certain days of the week. And to do that, we'll add some syntax which specifies time and day of the week. And you can see the way it's shown here on the screen, we have a script that's going to run at 5:55 a.m. every day of the week, and another one that executes at 23:59 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then finally one at 3 o'clock p.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday only. So that's how we're going to add that detail to our script. After we add the time and date information and we save that in our script, we invoke that Envision Effects shortcut that's running that script, and Vision Effects will now be running in the background. After we test our script to make sure things work properly, we're going to put that shortcut into the Windows Startup folder so that every time our computer boots up, that shortcut will be executed, which will execute the script. Now, when we want things to invoke automatically and having it run all the time, we'll want to have things run in silent mode. So I'll look at how to do that now, and we'll also see how to add that shortcut to the Windows Startup folder. Now we'll add the time of day and the day of the week where we want to execute our script. So we'll open up the script file again, and in the top line we want to execute the whole thing certain times of the day and certain days of the week. So we'll have it execute at, let's say, 14:35 and every day except for Saturday and Sunday. So we put a dash for Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and another dash for Saturday, another end bracket, and we've added the syntax. So we save this file. And this is the script that's already specified in our Envision Effects shortcut. So now we double click on the shortcut and we're still not in silent mode. So when we double click on it, it's not actually doing anything yet because it's waiting for 2:35 p.m. So now it's 2:35 p.m. and our script just executed and everything worked. Because we didn't have any files ready to be retrieved, we get a message that says no matching file. So we didn't actually upload anything or delete anything, but everything executed. So that proves that you don't necessarily have to have files sitting there ready to be retrieved in order for it to work. Now we'll take a last step and have this execute in silent mode, and then make sure that the script is running all the time. So we'll close it down now and go into the shortcut. We right click on the shortcut and select properties. The script is already set up to execute at the time and the days of the week that we want, so we just go to the end of the target line, space, dash silent, and press OK. So we've made that change and the script is still fine. Now we'll double click on that. It takes a few seconds of execution and it seems as if nothing happened because everything is now running in the background. So nothing is really going to happen until tomorrow at 2:35 p.m. and then it'll attempt to do another transfer based on the way the script file was created. Now we'll make sure this executes all the time and that it doesn't stop after we shut down the computer. We'll add a copy of this shortcut to our Windows Startup folder. So we open the run window and then shell:/startup calls the startup folder. Currently, we're automatically loading Google Chrome from startup. Then we'll copy the shortcut and paste it into our startup folder. So now, even after the computer is shut down, when it reboots, it's going to automatically rerun that script, and it's going to be ready to transfer files automatically in the background. We want to know it's actually running in the background, and the way we can do that is we can go into the Task Manager, and under Processes, we can see our file transfer client located there. If we go to Details, we can see Envision Effects.executable that's also running. So everything's running in the background ready for 2:35 p.m. tomorrow. So we have created an Envision Effects script that every day, Monday through Friday, at a certain time of the day, it executes a sequence that's going to load files from a predetermined directory in the OCS. And then after it has copied them into the location on the computer that we specified in the script, it deletes those files from the OCS memory card and then waits around until the next day. So that is doing automated scripting using Envision Effects for file transfers. So to summarise, FTP is a convenient way to transfer files to and from the OCS over Ethernet. It's easy to set up on the OCS side, just a few steps. You will need an FTP client software of some kind to transfer the files. EnvisionFX is an option if you're using an OCS on a Windows-based PC, and the advantages of EnvisionFX is that you get Horner support and you have a straightforward mechanism for automating and scheduling file transfers. So that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you so much for listening, and the Q&A session will begin shortly.
Okay, I think that was pretty straightforward. So next week we have using thermistors. The registration link is up, and we'll get this webinar up into the past webinar section so that anyone can review it. Other than that, thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you again. We'll talk to you next week.